Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ from JJ Meets World. Today's episode is a check-in episode. I'm going to see how Tucker's doing. He's going to see how I'm doing. And we're going to navigate through this pandemic together, everybody. Plus, some amazing laughs. If you've ever been on a waterbed before, be sure to listen all the way to the end of this episode. Enjoy! And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is! He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most, JJ. This is JJ Meets World, and this episode is about checking in. Tucker and I both had some really long, complicated weeks, and I realized it's been a while since we checked in with the listeners of JJ Meets World. We did one of these a few months ago, kind of in the first third of the pandemic, when it was getting to be really bad in the upper Midwest, where Tucker and I recorded these episodes. And I thought it was a good time because, man, it is a very stressful time to be alive in the United States, in the world, in Fargo, North Dakota right now. Everything seems to be getting politicized. We have one of the largest whine and complain sessions I've ever heard in America going on right now. We still have a disease that is killing people on a daily basis, that now apparently, if you believe that it still could get you, you're seen as weak by some people. You have other people who are so sick and tired of the pandemic that they're trying to just push it out of their minds. And I went and saw Tenet and realized that Christopher Nolan is overrated. So a lot's going on right now. So I wanted to do an episode that was a kind of a check-in so that we could talk to each other and just see kind of where everyone's sitting in their lives right now. Tucker, if you don't mind, I'm going to go first. I'll kind of update the people.
I'm still working on this donuts.
What kind of a donut did you choose today?
Actually, this is more of a roll. It's a fried peanut butter.
Fried peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
Tucker and I both got a donut before today, and I go with just the basic glazed, and that's only because I did not see a plain cake donut in the case.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a donut fan to begin with, but if I'm going to have one, it's a kind of a basic donut.
Well, Sandy's has really good coffee, which is where we went. And I've got a coffee from there, and I think the fried peanut butter is the best pairing with black coffee.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Would you ever just have peanut butter coffee?
I mean, I'd try it if that was a thing. I don't put cream or anything or sugar or anything, so it would have to be more like if the roast itself, had a flavor of peanut butter in some way.
Fried peanut butter, why don't they put some jelly on the inside? And then it's like a PB&J.
Well, I mean, they could. That would just be a whole other thing.
I'm just saying, why? You're missing out. You're halfway there.
I don't always want jelly. I pretty much always want peanut butter.
What?
Yeah.
So are you eating just a peanut butter sandwich?
If I'm doing a peanut butter sandwich, what's your PB to J ratio?
Oh, it's one piece that has one bread slice that's covered in peanut butter, one bread slice that's covered with jelly.
Right, but what's the thickness of the coverings, though?
I think just by its nature, there's more peanut butter than there is jelly.
Right.
But I make sure to eat it jelly side up.
Oh, because you think the peanut butter is going to catch more of it?
Yeah.
You don't want that flavor going directly to your tongue?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fine with that, but I strongly advocate it at a minimum, a 2-for-1 ratio.
Two parts jelly?
2 parts peanut butter to 1 part jelly. I would go as far as 3-to-1.
Well, this is the last episode of JJ Meets World.
You can severely over jelly a sandwich. It's hard to do that with peanut butter.
See, I beg to differ because at one point the peanut butter takes over the flavor so much. It was Robert Irvine, okay, who does the show Restaurant Impossible, was in town like 2 years ago, and Jill and I went to his presentation, and it was part rah-rah for the military and
I think
part
you brought
cooking
this up
game
before,
show.
haven't
Yeah.
you?
And he talks about how if you've ever messed something up, so if you made something too spicy, add peanut butter to it. And he goes, it might sound gross, but peanut butter neutralizes all flavors. And so,
Right.
like, let's say you have a big stock pot of chili and it's too spicy. Add peanut butter to it, and it'll kind of bring everything back to a neutral spot, and then you can redo your spices.
Uh-huh.
So, to me, all you're doing is making a neutral sandwich.
Well, but think about, no, I mean, it's not like mixed in, it's side by side, right? Like they're not to the point where it's going to fully negate the other.
Mm.
Here's how I approach it.
Uh-huh.
Think about things that are sugary or sweet,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
You've ever bitten into something, you're like, oh, that's too sweet, right? Like that's really rich. Like it tastes really good, but I can only eat so much of it because it's so rich.
Mhm.
Anything sweet like that, you can push too far. It can go too far. There's a ceiling. There's not really a ceiling with peanut butter. Like it never, the flavor never overwhelms. There
Okay.
might just be too much food matter. They're like,
That's
oh,
what I'm
going to get full.
Okay, good. I'm glad you say that because that's the thing is peanut butter requires effort. It's like a really soft solid that you have to chew the shit out of.
What kind of peanut butter are you?
Or you end up like you can have you put a spoonful of peanut butter in your mouth and you're.
Well, yeah, and then you
Do you know
always
how they
have a
got-
beverage. You
Do you know how they
always
got
have a
Mr.
beverage.
Ed to talk in the Mr.
Yeah, they
Ed
use
TV
peanut
show?
butter.
They put and then so the poor horse is constantly pulling its lips
See?
back trying to get that peanut
See?
butter to be swallowed.
It's like copper. It's got all sorts of uses, right? Like you can do so much with it. Jelly's a one-trick pony if we're
Okay.
going to use equestrian.
So if
rules here.
by that logic, if
Mhm.
peanut butter is copper, name another essential metal that has a food twin. Like for example,
I'd say cheese is silver.
both in value and consistency.
Yeah.
What about like lead? Like beef jerky?
No,
Would beef jerky
no,
be your
no,
lead?
No. I think some sort of like flavorless, crunchy vegetable, like a celery. It's something that I like. Like I like it, but you would never just have it on its own.
Okay.
It's always an ingredient to something else.
The periodic table of meats. That's we'll work on that
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to the check-in, I had a whirlwind of a week where I almost changed careers
Mhm.
just in like a boom in a moment. I was a part of the biggest event in North Dakota since March. Big Iron was out at the River Valley Fairgrounds. I got a ton of stuff done in my house and I protected my property.
Let's start with that one.
Okay. So it's cleanup week in Fargo, North Dakota, which means if you have garbage that won't normally fit in your garbage can, like let's say an old dishwasher you're throwing out, or you've got a bunch of Rubbermaid totes that are cracked that you need to get rid of, or a big pot that used to house a beautiful houseplant you got. During cleanup week, you can put all these things on the curb and they'll come and take them away for free, including tires. They don't want like televisions and monitors, but you could throw away an entire refrigerator. You could throw away a bedroom set. You can get rid of mattresses, all the stuff that normally wouldn't fit in your garbage can.
A lot of times you can find aquariums that way.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
although I did not go looking this year, but
So, it's amazing because I would say 3/4 of the things that are put out on the curb don't actually get taken to the landfill. They get collected by other people looking for like a treasure. So let's say you put an old basketball hoop out because you don't have kids anymore. Somebody who has kids or who wants to get better at basketball is going to grab that off your curb and repurpose it. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So I do this every single year, but if I have anything that plugs in, I am hesitant about putting them out. And this is why. There are complete and total douchebags who will drive up and not take anything, but they'll snip the cords off of everything because they want the copper, that is in the electrical cord. So at 1 year, like we had like use it to like steam clean floors, something that, one of the cleaning companies makes. And it was still perfectly good. And I put a note on it and said like, works great, perfectly good. We no longer have tile floors.
Right.
And so I put it out there, and then I saw someone pull up. They didn't even bother to like read the note. They just went right down, snip the cord right off. And now it's worthless because for someone to have to put a new cord on this is not impossible, but they snip it so close to where it is in the casing that there's no point.
No, it would probably cost more anyways. Just to get that
right. So I took out a trash compactor. You ever have a trash compactor?
No.
In any of your homes? So the idea is that it's a small device that fits underneath a cabinet, and you put your garbage in it, and like a steel head comes down, and it uses pneumatic pressure to crush garbage into like a cube.
Okay.
And so you can put 5 times as much garbage as you would in a normal bag into a trash compactor.
Okay.
And then you get this ultra heavy, ultra dense bag of garbage. So the idea is that if you've got a small garbage can, if you're in a small space, if you don't want to make trips out to the garbage 2-3 times a week, you can do it with a trash compactor. Very popular in the late 80s, early 90s.
Gotcha.
My mom had one. This thing has not worked since Jill and I moved into that house, which would be 4 years ago. And I know for a few years before my mom passed away, she didn't even use it because it just didn't work, and people weren't coming out to service them anymore. So I decided this is the time to get rid of the trash compactor. So I take the trash compactor out, and I've got a cabinet builder right now who's building me a bunch of like cabinet stuff. And oh my God, I'm so excited about it. So I take this thing out, I put it out there, and I put it out there. So specifically I hide the cord that it uses to plug in. Yesterday, 7:30 in the morning, I walk downstairs and I see a guy, and he's looking at all the garbage, and he's grabs a tricycle that's missing the 2 wheels in the back. So now it's a unicycle with a seat, and pops it in the back of his truck. And then he goes over to the trash compactor, and he sees the cord, and I walk back to his truck, and I come out and I'm like, hey, don't snip the cord off of that. And he yells, F you, and then smashes the like housing box. Like he starts kicking and smashing this thing like on my driveway. And so I'm only in a robe, and I run out there, and I'm like, hey, get out of here.
What?
And he goes, F you again. And then he kicks it so hard that it's like the front of it, which is not glass, but like a plexiglass, shatters and is now all over my lawn.
Oh man. Whoa.
What a jerk.
What a strong reaction.
Right. And here's the thing. He gets in his car and he peels away, but then stops at my neighbor's house to look at their garbage. So he goes a total of like 30 feet in his rage.
Jesus.
And now then I had to go and pick up all the like plexiglass and stuff. And now it's completely useless. So someone who might have even said, hey, I could fix this.
Right.
Or I could take the motor out of this and put it into something.
Right.
It's now completely useless. So now it's 100% garbage. And so I took it, I grabbed it, and I brought it back up to my house because I didn't want anyone else to like tear it apart to try and get some more metal or something out of it. And I'm just disappointed. I also took this giant dresser that's taller than I am. It is an enormous piece from a built-in that my parents used to have. And it was out there, and it's perfectly fine, and someone took it overnight, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad that somebody grabbed that, and it wouldn't fit in a van, so they probably had to come back and tie this thing to the top of a car, which would be pretty funny to watch. But I'm so glad that that's going to have a second life to it.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of what I'm having right now is I am having this second life. So I'm making all of these new additions to my house, and I'm making it. I'm no longer living in my mom's house. I'm now living in my space where I've had a part of the design elements.
Right.
And I'm entering this new part of my life where I am having a rebirth, so to speak. And it took COVID to spur that thing. I found a lot of silver linings to what the pandemic has meant to the world around me. I see nonprofits who refuse to pivot and refused to change anything. And now they're really hurt that they couldn't have their usual fundraiser. Oh, no. But I'm also seeing groups who say, we actually had the most successful version of our annual fundraiser this year because instead of getting someone into a banquet room and feeding them an overdone chicken cutlet and making them watch a video and hoping them to open their hearts, we found a way where we could deliver dinner to their entire family.
Right.
And then we put a video up online that they could watch or not, depending on what they want. And they found that people want to support things that they're doing, but in a different way.
Right.
And so that to me is a silver lining, right?
Right.
It's a silver lining that people can look at it. I also see people appreciating their job a lot more because they either know that their company is willing to consider them versus considering profit. So allowing people to work from home is great. You don't get the accountability, but people thrive in a home working environment. And we've found that this was the kickstart to it. You know, it's something people have talked about for years, but the pandemic was the kickstart to realizing, gosh, we don't need a cubicle for every single person we have.
Right.
We just need to have the ability to have them out. And then look at what that's done for companies like Hewlett Packard or Microsoft or Apple. I guarantee you they sold more products during the last quarter than they ever have.
Right.
Because everyone needs a work from home computer now.
True accountability is oftentimes just deadlines and quality of work
Right.
versus like having to be seen in a cubicle somewhere at a certain time, at a certain place, when, you know, there are benefits obviously to in-person collaboration, or even like you and I sitting in this room together talking to each other. Like there's definitely a benefit there, but you don't need to structure an 8-hour day where everyone is in the same building to ensure that that happens. You can actually be more intentional about those things, like, which at H2M, you know, we're basically, what we do is a couple weeks before the pandemic even hit, we moved to a more remote structure for how all of us work.
What was the term you guys used for it?
I think it's something along the lines of like hotel officing or something. So basically we have the office here, and then everyone who works here does have a desk here. They have a place they could come here and work if they want, but they don't have to. They can work from home if they so choose, or if they want to work at a coffee shop that morning, or if they want to, you know, work in Dubai, that's fine. There are a couple of company meetings that happen weekly that we check in via like GoToMeeting and stuff like that. We're constantly in communication via Slack, right? And we use Monday for project management and stuff. It certainly, though, it's not the perfect model for every situation, for every company, right? We're a marketing agency. Like what we deal with, it's like the perfect setup, right? You don't need to always be in the room together for this stuff. But obviously, if it was a factory, right? If you had people who have to assemble a certain thing or do a certain thing, or, you know, a car mechanic shop where, you know, you have to get together there, they don't have that luxury. It just
We're talking about the office work.
For sure, definitely.
And in that case, too, there are some situations where it doesn't work necessarily. I can't do my show from my basement every single day because I don't have control over everything I have back at the studio. So on my day-to-day, I still need to go in and actually do my show from the studio.
I could totally, though, however, see a future where all radio station DJs and personalities and stuff, they all just have built up a home studio and they remote into whatever station they're contracted with. So like a radio station wouldn't necessarily be a building that everyone goes to and does it from, right? But it actually all happens remotely down the line.
Right.
I could see that happening.
I see kind of a hybrid of what you're saying and what's traditional, like in the very near future. I think home studios are where it's at. So myself and my partner could be in two different places hosting this show at the same time. I do think someone physically, a producer or a board op, is going to have to remain back there because the epicenter, I mean, that's where EAS tests and like warnings come in. And that's, you know, there's just a certain amount of in-person running that needs to take place. Now, that being said, someone's 8-hour shift could be controlling 7 different stations at one time and making it work.
Right.
So it's definitely exciting. So I think there are a lot of silver linings that we have found that has come out of this. I also know that I had a few people who are parents who I would talk to who said, you know, I don't really know who my kids are, and I'm not really a very good parent because I'm busy and I've got all these things going on. And this time has actually forced them to become a parent. And it has drastically changed their lives as far as now they don't identify themselves as, oh, I'm the vice president of this company and, I'm the head of my softball team. So I'm a dad to 2 amazing kids.
Right.
And I feel because there are other people too where we haven't been able to really fully adapt. High school students, in my opinion, need the community of a high school, and that was taken away from them last year. And even now, I'm still advising at Fargo North High for their improv club, and we had our first meeting last week, and it was weird.
Is everything for them via Zoom?
No. So certain kids come on certain days, other kids come on other days.
Okay.
School ends a lot earlier. Like school ends at like 2:45 now for them, and there are students who can choose an all hybrid.
Okay.
Now, that being said, any student who's a student of Fargo Public Schools is eligible to come to this improv club.
Right.
So even if you're only doing virtual learning, you can still come to the club after school. And so we talked about also like, okay, so what are we going to do? And last year, the kids are working on a parody of Shark Tank called the Croc Cave. And there's the Investor Gators.
That's nice. That is awesome.
Right? And so we figured out a way to use just some like mats, and then we'll use their actual school computers, and we're going to do a Zoom improv show that is a parody of Shark Tank with this Croc Cave. So the audience will chat in with us, and they'll provide the what the name of the product is, and then the improviser will have to improvise like, oh yeah, and it'll be like, it's called Twin Socks. Twin socks. What it is it's 3 socks, 1 joint sock that the 2 twins are going to wear, and then a righty and a lefty for whatever else is out there. And so they've got to improvise what it is. And then for the investigators, they are going to get whatever their background is in. So like, oh, this person made money in real estate, or this person made money because they wrote a catchphrase for a television show. So their questions for these products will be themed around how their character
Gotcha.
So like for Twin Socks, like I love the idea, but could we turn this into an ice cream cone?
Right.
So
are you the Mark Cuban then, basically, or are you just?
I know. I just get to watch.
Okay.
I just advise them. I'm the director, if you will.
Gotcha.
But I think and so we're going to go into these rehearsals, just doing this over and over and over again until we refine the look and feel of it. And their first improv show this year will be in a virtual space with a virtual audience. And it's different. I mean, they're learning a skill set that I mean, even at this point, I technically don't even know if it's going to work.
Right.
Because there's so much in the comedy and improv world where you need to release some dialogue and get a response from it.
Yep.
This, 0 response.
Yep.
So you're just going to have to go with your instinct that this is working and it's connecting with an audience.
Right. Yep.
Crazy.
Working on that frontier right now. And that is a Wild West frontier for sure.
It really is. Well, so let's check in with Tucker Lucas.
So yeah, my couple weeks have been pretty crazy right now. Work has really picked up, which has been great. But there's been a lot of deliverables for clients that have all come down the pike like at once. So I've had a very busy 2 weeks, basically editing from home, trying to just get caught up in everything, doing a lot of shoots in different towns around the area for a couple of clients. And we have started a show at Theater B. I'm not going to do a full announcement here because the company hasn't fully announced it yet, but I'm directing it. And it's a 1-person show that we're working on doing a version of it that can be streamed on the internet.
Oh, cool.
And so, more to come from that. That is the thing that's pretty much consuming my life right now, which is exhilarating but terrifying at the same time. So that's my every day after work is basically that. And then at the beginning of this week, my kitty, Peter, decided to eat something. I'm not sure if it was cotton inside of one of his toys, or I've noticed he's been like chewing on the carpet lately, but he ate a bunch of like a foreign substance and it got lodged in his stomach and he was throwing up anything else he tried to eat after it. He got really sick. I had to take him to the kitty cat ER. He's doing fine now. It's been working through his system, so he's been keeping food down and doing good, but it was very expensive because I had to take him to the ER. It happened on a weekend, and so my vet isn't open on the weekend. It would have been a lot cheaper just to go to the vet. But we have a really great animal ER in town here. Like they're fantastic. So it's worth every penny. But that, if you're an obsessive pet owner like I am, that is something that just saps you of energy. You're worried about this thing that you love with all your heart, and you don't know what to do for it. And he can't tell me what's wrong, right? Like cats and dogs just can't really tell you what's wrong. And oftentimes cats will actually hide the fact that they're suffering or that they're in pain. It's like a evolutionary thing that they just have, whereas dogs are more likely to whimper and do other stuff. Cats will try to hide it from you. So that's been stressful, but he's doing better. How'd
they get it out?
Well, they didn't go in and get it out, but they did x-rays that first night. He stayed there overnight. He was dehydrated because he'd been throwing up. So they put him on an IV, and then they x-rayed him again in the morning, and the blockage had moved, and it was moving through his system. So they wanted to avoid surgery if we could, obviously. And so, he's thrown up once since I've had him back, and it looked like a bunch of potentially that stuff came up. I couldn't quite tell. But other than that, he's been doing really good. And so the idea is that it's just passing through his system, and it'll hopefully be out if it's not already. But if it gets worse, we have obviously got to go do surgery.
Any idea why he might be eating the carpet?
Well, he's a shithead.
Okay.
He just eats stuff. He chews on stuff all the time. So I don't think it's less about like, oh, I need to consume this. It's more like I love chewing on things, and when I do that, sometimes I swallow it. He had a stuffed sock monkey toy that he's had since he was a baby, and he's always loved carrying it around and playing with it. Well, recently he had opened it up, and I had been finding little tufts of cotton all over the place. So I thought, well, maybe that's what it is. He just decided he was going to chew on some cotton, and he swallowed it. He also, though, has this area of the rug next to my door that he scratches at in the morning when he's begging for food. And so there's this little frayed section of carpet, and I saw him yesterday, like biting at it, just playing with it, right, as a toy. So he's just, I think, accidentally, not intentionally swallowing things, which is a pain in the butt. Like, it's like, how do I stop him from doing that? I can't watch him 24/7. I did get rid of all of his toys that have stuffing, so now he's just like hard plastic toys, which is he'll just have to live with. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring it up because this last week I was kind of dealing with a conundrum in our house of we have a toy poodle who I think is 4 pounds. That's all George weighs. He's tiny little guy.
Itty bitty little guy.
And then we have a 50-pound Wheaton Terrier, Neely. But what we're lucky with is so George's toys finding toys for toy-sized animals is difficult. So George normally gets cat toys.
Okay.
But we have to be very diligent and careful to choose a cat toy that is interchangeable for cats or dogs, because some cat toys have catnip built into them.
Yep.
Are meant for their type of teeth.
Yep.
And so George has these little tiny toys that, in all honesty, Neely could easily eat.
Right.
Right? And so we're lucky because Neely does not eat those toys. But Jill calls these little toys George's babies because he'll carry them around in his mouth and then put them in his little dog bed and sleep.
Cute.
And she's like, "Do you have a baby? Is that your baby, George?" And I found myself saying the same thing today. Now, that being said, one of my favorite things right now to cook on the grill is a tomahawk steak. Have you ever seen these things?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So it's got the full rib bone on it.
Delicious.
So I will give the rib bone to Neely because it's a big bone. It's like sort of when Fred Flintstone puts that giant rack of ribs in his car, right? Mm-hmm. But every now and then I will see George carrying around one of those bones, lifting it straight up. The bone itself is longer than the dog. And so sometimes I think, Well, even though he only weighs so little, he still can carry quite a bit.
You know, you're the person who I just associate with someone who knows how to cook steaks. Right?
Oh, thank you.
And which is why recently on Facebook I posted on a video on your Facebook wall where I demanded that you make me something. And at some point you are going to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be now. I know life is busy, but at some point you're going to do this. But the guy, it was a video of a guy. He's like got a cooking channel. It's very popular. I can't remember his name. But this video was labeled "The Butter of the Gods." Yeah. And he made his own butter, and
his own compound butter.
I'd never seen anything like that. Have you made compound butter? What is compound butter?
So essentially, it's butter that you can mix with herbs and different things like that.
Okay.
And then it's not, you know how like butter gets super soft and stuff like that?
Yeah.
This stays harder longer so that when you put it on top of a steak, it doesn't just instantly melt.
Okay.
It kind of pools and has this slower melt quality, which is much better for like browning your steak or just getting it to be on there. So a lot of restaurants make their own compound butter.
Well, this compound butter had beef bone marrow, which I've never had bone marrow in anything.
So good.
That I'm aware of. It didn't look good when I was looking at it. I thought that looks pretty gross. But the reaction of these guys after they ate it, and not only, but that compound butter, it wasn't just that too. He had, what did he do with the egg yolks? He cured egg yolks.
Yeah, which I'd never seen before.
I'd never even heard of that. And then he grated it in. I was like, whoa, I want to like see what that tastes like. So at some point I need you to do that. And it needs to be a filet mignon.
I had the most expensive steak I've ever had recently. Like where the most expensive piece of meat I've ever purchased.
Okay.
There's a local butcher shop that got Wagyu beef in. And I went out $86 for a New York strip.
Okay.
It was the best steak I've ever had in my life. It was super tender. The lines of fat in it are super compressed, but there's so many of them that it just adds all of this flavor into the meat, and it is exceptionally good. And so, Tucker, that's what I would like to treat you to. And I know they've got another round of that coming in the not too distant future. And so you and I will go and enjoy that. You know what else I realized this summer? So I cook on a propane Weber grill. I'm a Weber fanatic. I always have been. But my God, I started cooking again over charcoal. That charcoal adds a flavor to it that you just don't get. And like on a burger,
there's a lot of ride or die charcoal users that are like, this is the only thing I'll ever use.
And of course, like a pellet grill is kind of the best of all worlds because it's self-feeding, it's easy to start, and then you get that smoky flavor to it.
So I've never, ever once successfully in my life started like a charcoal, whatever you call it, the oven or whatever, just the it cooking. I tried once at the lakes for my girlfriend's parents and failed. It was one of the most embarrassing things. I just couldn't get it started, and I didn't know what I was doing wrong. It's like, here's lighter fluid, here's flame, here's charcoal. What's not working? And I'm just so filled with anxiety about charcoal. I'm such a 21st century kid. I really, truly am. And I was born in the 80s.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Most of my life is lived in flamboyant wonderfulness. Just on the way over here, I was listening to the original cast recording of The Music Man.
Of course
76 trombones led the counterpoint. But one of the most quote-unquote manly things I do is my ability to grill. That being said, many, many years ago, the year was 2002, I get the opportunity to direct children's theater in Rutland, North Dakota, and I brought my good buddy Jared Nillis, rest his soul. And Jared was like, I know how to work a grill, and I've got it. And so he brought a little tiny charcoal grill with us, and the first night we were going to have burgers. I was working on the cast list. Jared was cooking the burgers. Jared comes in, he goes, it took me a little while to get the charcoal going, but here you go. And so I take, the outside of the burger is like charred. And I take one bite, and not only is the middle raw, like it is raw meat, but it tastes horrible. And I'm like, Jared, what the fuck? What happened here? And he said, well, I was, the charcoal like just wasn't getting hot. It wasn't getting hot. So I sprayed lighter fluid on it to like kind of get the flame up more, right? which makes sense, doesn't it?
Sure.
Nope, because
No.
now the flavor of the lighter fluid is in your meat. If the flame is coming from lighter fluid,
Yep.
it means that is what it's burning off into your meat. You use lighter fluid to start this thing, and then you don't put meat on the grill right away. You let it get to the point of where the coals are creating their own heat. These are things that my dad never taught me. Clearly, Jared's dad did not teach him. And so that was a real eye-opening night for us because there was no McDonald's to go to. There was nothing else. So that night we ate potato chips, and that was it for dinner.
You just touched on something I didn't really realize. Because, you said your dad sucked at cooking steak, right? It was all about how many beers he would have to
Yep.
drink.
Uh-huh.
How did you get good at it then? Who taught you?
Oh, just time.
Just
It was
time.
just time. Yeah.
It's like any fight or like a training sequence in like a Rocky film was you with steaks.
Like I said, I'm really loyal to Weber, right? And so I remember going to a couple of grill demonstrations that they had at the Home and Garden Show and other places where they talk to you about cooking meat. And one of the things is there's
the hand thing.
The hand thing where you touch like the meat underneath your thumb, and like if you touch it to your middle finger, that's medium well, and then the more down to the pinky, the more well it is. So that was the first time I'd ever heard that trick.
Okay.
And so over time, I just realized like this is what I like. I also, to me, the perfect complement to steak is garlic toast.
Okay.
And the best part about it is you use the garlic toast to mop up the juice on the plate. Well, when my dad would cook, to a Miller Genuine Draft 6-pack, usually there wasn't a lot of juice that came out of these puppies when you cut them. And so that was something I always wanted. And I remember somebody telling me like, oh yeah, you just need to cook it less. And then there's less, the juice doesn't run out of it. It still is inside the meat. I was well into my 20s before somebody told me, you need to let the meat rest. Cover it with tinfoil, but you need to let a steak rest for 10 minutes after you take it off the heat, to which it'll still continue to cook. So if you want something medium, you take it off at medium rare and it'll still raise its temperature. But letting it rest is actually those juices redistributing into the meat. And that goes for any meat you cook. That goes for turkey, goes for chicken, pork, ribs. And so that was something that changed my life. Also, the first time someone told me that pork doesn't have to be completely annihilated. You can have a pork chop that's done to medium rare.
Really?
In the 21st century and be fine. It used to be that you had to cook your pork chop, until it was practically, a hockey puck because they were worried about diseases. But at this point, pork is so well inspected that you don't have to worry about that.
But chicken, you still have to, don't you? Like you have to.
Yeah, you can't do. There's no medium on chicken.
No.
Chicken you cook the whole way through. But we've also now learned that chicken, because of the way the muscle is built on chicken, you cooking it in different ways is going to keep it juicier longer.
Right.
So slapping a chicken breast on the grill is never usually the best bet for it. Baking a chicken breast is something that's going to be better. So it was something that I just kind of picked up over the years. And then I love a good grilling cookbook. So I've got, Weber's got a million of them out there, but Bobby Flay's got a really good one too.
Right.
And then Grilled, GRILL, then apostrophe D. They've got a cookbook that is out of this world. And then the fact of the matter is like in the last 5 years, what's really been jazzing me on the grill is to grab things like a cast iron skillet and incorporate it. Reverse searing. Are you familiar with reverse searing?
Yep.
That is the big steak tip du jour. That's what I spent all summer doing with all of my steaks, is doing this reverse sear.
What's the best restaurant steak you've
had? There is a place, and I think it's in the Mirage, called Marrow.
Okay.
That was a steakhouse I went to. They had duck fat fries, Parmesan fries for a starter. They had roast marrow. They served right in the bone, which is amazing. But the steak I had was, without a doubt, the best steak I have ever had in my entire life.
Okay, so I think you and I need to make a resolution to each other as friends.
Okay, let's make a promise. I'm looking you right in the eyes.
We're going to make a promise. Once the pandemic is done, and we're going to try to do this in either 2021 or 2022. Okay. You and I are going to Vegas. Because last time we went to Vegas was when I turned 21 and you took me there for a present, right? Mm-hmm. I want to go back there again with you. and we're going to hit the Mirage. And we're going to do that place. Then the next day, we're going to go to Planet Hollywood, right?
Okay.
And there's a steakhouse there called Strip House. And that is the only time I can think of where I intentionally reminded myself to eat slow because the food was so delicious. I wanted to remember it. And I knew I would, there's a chance I'd never eat there ever again because it's expensive and it's in Vegas. And it was on the company's dollar at the time because we were there for a work trip. Dude, so I had a filet and it came with a peppercorn crust. And I am a sucker for a good peppercorn crust. It was cooked to perfection. It was medium rare. It was so flavorful. It was the kind of thing that if you saw someone go towards it with a jar of steak sauce, you would be legally obliged to shoot that person and kill them dead.
No.
No steak sauce should ever touch the steak. It is so perfect. It does not need it. But also it came with goose fat fried mashed potatoes.
Ooh.
And I'd never heard of goose fat frying or duck fat frying. And that was a new flavor I've never since then had. That.
Have you ever had goose?
No, not that I don't think so. I would assume I would remember it if I did because the goose fat flavored potatoes were out of this world. We did not talk for an hour. There was 4 of us. We're all bullshitters except one of them wasn't. But normally we would be talking. We did not speak. That's how good this
Those
was.
are amazing meals.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me like the best chain restaurant steak I've ever had, it's a small chain, but it's called Smith and Walensky's. Did we go there when you were in Chicago with me?
I can't remember. I'm not sure if
Anyway.
I can remember the name of the place.
So Smith and Walensky's, they've got restaurants. There's one in Vegas. They've got a Chicago one. It's right on the Chicago River. It's if you're looking for a late night steak, it's amazing. But everything's served family style, which I also love. So you order a big plate of Brussels sprouts for the whole table. And the steak that I used to have there was a bone-in ribeye, and I had it done like you'd have to kind of sweet talk them into it, but it's kind of done Pittsburgh blue style, which is where they superheat the outside for a very short amount of time, and then it is practically raw on the inside. And it is, as far as a chain, it is consistent in like the 5 locations I've been to in the country. I've been to one in Washington, D.C., one in Columbus, Ohio. I wish they had one in the cities. I've been to the Vegas one, and of course Chicago.
Right.
It is consistently an amazing steak. So if you find yourself at a Smith and Walensky's, you know you're in good hands there. But if you think you're getting the best when you go to your local neighborhood,
Just
like
already no
restaurant, you think, I'm getting a New York strip, and it's great. It's just not that great. And also,
those are the steaks that A1 is for.
Right, exactly. And and even the cuts of it, get to know your butcher. One of the best things you can do is whether you're buying it from like a counter at a grocery store or
that's one
an
of those
actual like meat store.
That's one of those things I've heard you say a couple of times on the show.
Get to know your butcher.
To the point that we should just make it a T-shirt in the JJ Meats World.
We should
merch shop.
Mm-hmm.
We could totally. So we'll design that. We'll get that made.
This last Friday before recording was National Cheeseburger Day, and I wanted to do a segment on my radio show about that. And so I called up my local butcher and I said, Kevin, I want to have you on today and I want to talk about ground beef. He goes, I got a lot to say. See,
now ground beef is a place where I feel very comfortable with, and that's not something to brag about. It should be pretty easy to handle ground beef. But my ground beef game has gone up under quarantine.
Now, here's something Kevin told me. Do you ever wonder why those percentages that you see at the grocery store for extra lean, lean, always are the same number percentage?
What do you mean?
So like extra lean ground beef is 93% lean.
Okay.
Like lean ground beef is 85%.
Got it.
And it's always 85%. It's not 86. It's not 87. You never see a 90%. It's 93 or 85. So what he was talking about is like so much extra stuff essentially gets ground up in these things that they're able to establish the leanness.
Okay.
Whereas like when you go to a butcher shop, any good butcher shop will only grind a particular, like muscle group for that ground beef.
Okay.
And so he talked like at length about how getting to know the ground beef that you choose is important for what you're going to use it for.
Right.
So, for example, if you're going to make chili, it really doesn't matter what ground beef you use, whether it's from a grocery store or a butcher shop. It doesn't matter if it's been frozen for 4 months, because the flavor is not coming from the beef.
Right.
It's coming from the tomato and the spices and yada, yada, yada. The beef more or less is just there for the, because chili's got beef in it.
Yep. When I make taco meat, I'm typically using a fairly lean beef because I don't want to have to drain it.
Right.
I just want to let it sit, and everything that's in the pan stays in the pan. But if I'm doing burgers and I'm going to want, some good fat, that's part of the flavoring. However, I only make burgers at home now after I've made bacon in the pan.
Yep. So you can get that flavor from that grease.
So I make bacon in the pan first, and I let it sit off to the side and cool. I actually throw some butter in there just to almost not quite to make a roux, but just to make it a bit thicker and add some more.
Excellent use of the word roux, by the way.
Right, thank you.
Good work.
Get some more of, but just to get some more flavor in there. And obviously you're cooking it at a low enough heat so you're not burning the butter, which is something that I've had to learn the hard way this year a lot. Because I've said in previous podcasts, I'm horrible at cooking because I've never put any time into learning how to get good at it. So I've been working on what are some staple things I can make at home that I'm getting better at. And my bacon cheeseburgers are just off the chain now. They're insanely good. But yeah, make bacon in the pan first, throw some butter in there. And then I don't sit with any particular time. I just sort of sit with the burger and flip it over every couple of minutes and push it down and feel like it's getting to the point where I need it to get. And then I turn it down to low and I put a piece of cheese on there and then I cover it. So then the cheese gets a nice perfect melt on the outside of the burger.
Mm-hmm.
Put that on. And then before you finish, you still got some juices left in that pan. You toast your buns in there. You get them nice and toasty in there because then they're going to soak up even more of that bacon flavor and everything. Oh, man. So good. You don't need any.
You want one right now.
You don't need no ketchup. You don't need nothing, man. You just need the burger.
And the juiciness should be there. I mean, that's why you use a less lean cut or set of ground beef, because fat is the highway to which flavor travels.
Right. I need to find. So the only thing is that I haven't been going outside of normal hamburger buns, which I want to start venturing out, because pretzel buns to me are the pinnacle. That's if every sandwich from here on out to the end of my life could be on a pretzel bun, I would deem that. I would wave a magic wand and make that happen.
Are you doing anything to keep your burger from puffing up in the middle?
I mostly. Oh, I know. I continually flatten it
out
because then its juices distribute in the pan and then start cooking on the outside of it again. So I'm not poking anything in the middle or doing anything like that. I'm just constantly pressing it.
So here's a tip. Here's a JJ Gordon tip. When I hand patty my burgers, I put my thumb into the middle of the burger and make an indentation. And then, for me, I usually cook mine on the grill. So when I throw it on the grill, I fill that indentation with Worcestershire sauce. And it makes a little flavor pool that cooks into the burger.
Interesting.
And so by the time I flip it, it is usually caramelized into that area.
Right.
And it's just phenomenal.
Do you like onion?
Oh, I love onion.
Because sometimes I will mix a little diced onion in with the beet.
Excellent move.
But then I always put raw onion on the burger.
Yeah.
I love raw onion on a sandwich. I need it.
If you had a Walla Walla sweet onion, do you know what I'm talking about?
I saw you made a post about that recently. I don't think I've ever had one of those
my
before.
gosh. I'm going to bring some for you, Tucker.
Okay.
It is. So I
love
love onion. I love red onion. I love yellow onion. I think that there's a place for everything out there.
We're on the same page. Why would you be upset with previous choices I made about peanut butter and jelly? Look at us bonding over onions.
Well, I mean, there's a reason we don't live together anymore.
Yeah. You're married.
Yeah. Well, I mean, besides that.
Yeah.
The Walla Walla sweet onion's amazing because when you smell it, it smells sweet, but you get that oniony to it. I've never had tears come to my eyes. It is the mellowest onion. And it's so good. Did you watch that whole post where I take I take a bite of it like you can eat one like you eat an apple.
That was what my grandmother used to do, but just with regular onions, with just any onion, which I've never done that before, but I like them as additions to other meals.
Mm-hmm. They're great.
Yeah.
The onion is a wonderful complement to so many other things. Also, our tomatoes in the garden. Here's another silver lining to COVID. Jill and I gardened we were my grandparents over the summer. So we had more tomatoes than I've ever seen before. We had cucumbers. We had fresh herbs from basil to parsley to dill. We had a whole crop of Walla Walla sweet onions, rhubarb, new potatoes. I mean, peppers, hot peppers, shishito peppers. This summer has been the summer of the shishito pepper to me. They are friggin' phenomenal.
You two are going to be like that adorable old couple with just the insane garden on the block that everyone is getting samples of all the time. It's going to be adorable.
Jill so our first harvest of tomatoes came really quick. Like a bunch of them went right away, and we weren't ready to do any canning. And so Jill put a box out in the front of our house that said free heirloom tomatoes. And I mean, there must have been 70, 80 tomatoes in there. And our neighbors over the span of the next 12 hours rode their bikes by, grabbed a tomato, moved on.
Nice.
And we didn't find a single one that got thrown at our house.
That's nice.
Which is really nice.
That's good.
And so then we did the same thing with rhubarb. The next time we harvested rhubarb.
Trash compactor when that guy's clearly dealing with some stuff in his life.
And if you are a JJ Meets World listener, like, just don't even bother anymore.
Yeah.
Just come on. And I know I know that it's important that we do little things and check in with each other, because like I hadn't told you all about the gardening we did this year.
Right. I mean, I follow you on social media, so I mean,
so you've seen some of it,
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that
your social media presence is far more indicative of what's routinely going on in your life, whereas mine is check-ins on I'm eating this terrible food. My cat did this.
Yeah,
like those
that's
are the
very true.
Those are the two things that I pretty much talk about.
Although you don't want to know, my favorite part of following Tucker Lucas on social media is you reshare stuff from, is it Night Fright?
Yeah, Night Flight.
That tickle my fancy like there's no tomorrow. There's some really amazing stuff that you're able to reshare.
I need to see if I think I'm still a top fan on their site, because I pretty much just share all
Really?
that as much as I possibly can. Yeah, that's pretty much all. But I gotta say, man, when it comes to people liking your stuff on social media, I've been doing pretty well lately. But I think now that we're living in this COVID world, like it's kind of sad that I'm like, oh yeah, I got a lot of likes this week.
It's a lot of likes.
I feel bad about that.
My wife isn't very active on social media, but when she gets something that just has like a ton of likes, you're kind of proud of it, right?
Yeah,
like it
right.
kind of validates you in a little way. It shouldn't, but
right.
It does.
Well, my cats have their own following, like they have their own fandom.
Mm.
So most people are just checking in to see what's going on with them, which I'm totally cool with, because a lot of those folks, I just follow them because I want to see what their cats are doing too.
If I could have an ask of the JJ Meets World listeners, it would be this. When you're done listening to this episode, first of all, have you reviewed us? We would really appreciate that. A 5-star review on iTunes goes a long way. But call somebody. Don't text them. Call somebody you haven't talked to since the pandemic began. Do you have a cousin out there you haven't talked to? Do you have a coworker or a friend? Even if it's somebody who you just posted something on their wall recently, talk to them voice to voice and just ask them how things are going. And if they just keep everything on the level and say, oh, we're fine, everything's good, that's great. Sometimes people need to talk, and sometimes you need to talk.
Speaking of reviews, JJ, so I have started the dating app lifestyle earlier this week.
Okay.
And
how many total?
There are 3 that I'm on.
Whoa.
And I had everyone's heard of Tinder, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that one. And I should just preface, when like Tinder and all these dating apps first came out, I was in the middle of a long-term relationship. So like I missed that entire like first wave of everyone like using the service and all that kind of stuff and figuring it out. So it's weird, like starting up these apps. I almost feel like a person of an older generation learning like a new technology. Like I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to write this? But it's weird. So I'm on Tinder. I'm on Bumble, which I'm told is something where like the woman makes the first move. So if you match, I believe she has to initiate the conversation, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then this third one, which I'd heard of, called Hinge. And Hinge works differently, where it's not about swiping right or left, but you've got a profile, right? You've got photos up and you've got life events up and all this other stuff. And then any one of those items, someone can like it and send you a comment, and that just starts the conversation that way.
Oh,
So
interesting.
that's one where you can like continuously review everyone who's in your area again versus like Tinder and Bumble. Once you've gone through and swiped through people, you're just not going to see them again for a long time.
And none of these are super niche, right? Like, like single farmer or farmers only,
Yeah,
like a thing.
They don't specify that you have to live and work on a farm.
Or Plenty of Fish where it's Christian based.
Oh, that's right. No, yeah, it's nothing like that. It's just
Okay.
dating or
'Cause
just making friends.
I have some super specific dating apps I've been meaning to launch. Grumble, where it's you find someone who dislikes something as much as you do. So, for example,
that is not a bad idea.
I know, I'm telling you.
That's
So-
actually a really good
so
idea.
you instantly have something to connect with because you both hate mustard. Grumble. Fumble for people who want to connect with other people who are not good at making love.
Are all of your business ideas based off of what rhymes with Bumble?
Yep. Stumble if you're bad at first dates. If you know that you're going to stumble at the beginning of your first date. Do you know the number of first dates that I've been on?
I'm going to guess 4.
I couldn't tell you if that's true or not because I have been told after the date has taken place that was a first date. And I was like, wait, what? Oh my God. Why did I go talk to the manager of the movie theater for so long? It is shocking to me how many dates I've been on when I didn't realize that they were dates.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I'm a gullible person in a lot of cases, and I just don't realize it. Because for a long time, I had such poor self-esteem that I never thought anyone would want to go on a date with me. And so, to my detriment, I didn't realize I was going on a date. I thought I was just going out with a person.
Right.
I thought I was just on a friendly movie excursion, or I'm eating at Olive Garden on Valentine's Day with somebody who's like-minded, and then didn't realize that they were dates.
Yeah. I have definitely had those first dates that go really poorly because you're like, oof. Like you and that person realize within the first minute, this isn't going to work.
And neither of you are, you're both too polite to call it off right then and there.
Yep.
Be like, no.
Yep. I went on a first and only date once with this woman. This was years ago I think this was on OkCupid. So I had tried that dating app, but that was just a totally different vibe. It was like the MySpace of dating apps, basically. And she had asked me out for coffee. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And so we went out to coffee. The first thing she did immediately was start tearing into some friends of mine.
Oofta.
Like just taking a messy dump on these guys. And I was like, whoa, does she know that I'm tight with them? I'm not sure if she knows that I'm tight with them, but it doesn't matter at this point because she's going hard in the paint. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. And she could tell immediately that I was upset by what she was saying. But we sat there for an hour and had like a painful, just pulling teeth conversation.
That's no good.
I think when we left, we both did the, whew, all right, well, chalking that loss up, take the loss on that one and go home and watch some Netflix.
I've got some ideas for dating websites too. Would you like to hear them?
Sure.
Okay. So
It's
we've
like
heard
okstupid.com.
we've heard of Match.com, right? Latch.com for needy people. If you're going to latch onto that person, you go to Latch.com, okay? If you know that you want to go on if you want to get in the dating scene, but you don't want to have to go on a bunch of first dates, you go to Batch.com where you go on a date with 5 other people and then hope that one of them makes a connection.
Do you think anyone has ever found dating a success with Craigslist?
Yes.
You think
so? I know 2 people who've been involved in a misconnection.
Really?
Yeah.
Meaning, but that the other person saw it? And then
where they're like, you were working at Barnes & Noble, and I saw you in the children's section. You were reading story time, and so they reached out like as a
you literally
joke.
just described an ex-girlfriend of mine.
Oh, is that how you met?
No.
That story time at
was
Barnes & Noble?
That was her job.
Oh, really?
That's what she did.
Oh.
So I bet that was
Awkward.
that was probably someone looking for her.
Well, that was just the example I threw out there because I happened to be at Barnes & Noble recently.
So that's hilarious.
Well, it wasn't her because it was the female is a different one. So but that's interesting. We're like, oh, I saw you putting Christmas lights on the tree in downtown Fargo, and you were wearing a Hello Kitty hat. And so it just to me, like, I've never seen someone who said like, hey, I'm a long haul trucker and I'm just looking for something while I fill up my big rig.
Yeah.
But I think that
BBW seeks BBC.
there are different types of people. Like, there's some people who've made connections that seem totally implausible. Like, okay, you're not Nora Ephron, so stop writing a romantic comedy here.
Right.
But it just happens to be what it is, and love, just like life, finds a way.
I think one of the it shouldn't be awkward because it's in the privacy of your own home or on your phone, but one of the more awkward parts of the dating sites right now is when you come across people you know and you realize they could see you on here, right? And there's that feeling of like I've had to kind of struggle through that feeling of embarrassment, right? Of oh, this is kind of awkward and weird, but it's the 21st century, and
I think more connections are made in a digital arena than are in a physical one at this point,
and especially in a COVID world. How are you supposed to go out and meet people, right?
Don't forget, we are beyond the age of when they would send you a videotape.
That's right.
Compiled of interviews done at like a mall somewhere.
That's right.
Where it's like push pound 716 for Tucker. It's like, hi, my name's Tucker. I have 2 cats.
Yep.
I make a mean cheeseburger. And
maybe I should take the fact that I'm a podcaster off of my bio. Maybe that's what's hurting me.
No, you should keep it on there.
Maybe people they're like, oh, this guy's cool, podcaster, and then they swipe left.
Maybe, if they were, do you ever read Misery or see the movie Misery? Okay, so it's a Stephen King book about a guy named Paul Sheldon who writes like these romance novels, a series of romance novels, and he gets involved in this car crash in rural Colorado, and the woman who saves his life is like his #1 fan, but she turns out to be totally crazy and had been stalking him. And so his legs are both broken, and so she's nursing him back to health in her rural like farmhouse somewhere. And it's I think Kathy Bates' like first major role in the movie. Okay. And she plays opposite of James Caan in it, and it's super claustrophobic because 95% of the movie happens in this room. You could end up being miseried. That's what I'm saying, Tucker, is like you keep podcast on there so that one day when your apartment's on fire and you're going, I need some oxygen, you get thrown in the back of an ambulance and driven away by someone who identifies himself as your #1 fan.
I'm trying to understand if you're saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, it's a good thing because it'll save my life, but I'm then going to get tortured in the woods for a week?
Oh, he was tortured, but it was only after he broke her rules.
Spoiler alert, JJ.
You need to watch.
I haven't seen this movie yet.
Oh, you need to watch. Well, first of all, the movie came out like in 1991, so 30 years is far beyond it. It's a phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Also, I would highly recommend the audiobook version of it as well. So a little more graphic.
I hear recommendations for things all the time, right? And what's like the go-to thing that any of us say when we're getting so many recommendations? I got to get to that. There's a lot on my to-watch list, right? I'm just thinking about how I could have been getting through a lot of that in the earlier parts of this year when nothing was going on. But now that everything is going on in life again, I don't know when I'll get a chance to sit down and watch anything, literally until December of this year. But I'm kind of both excited.
We're going to have a steak. Remember how you said you want a steak from me?
Yeah.
We're going to have steak and watch Misery one night.
Okay. Sounds good.
We'll have a bro night. You're going to love it. In fact, so I should also say this is a big update in my life. My wife gave me a movie screen for the basement, 100-inch movie screen. And so I built a rigid PVC pipe frame for it.
Nice.
And like a stand, and I ordered a projector and hooked it up to a surround sound system. And so that's how I watched Bill and Ted Face the Music and how I watched Mulan. And we've watched a bunch of movies on it since. And when I'm not using it, I can take it down and kind of store it behind some other furniture. But it has been awesome.
What would you say is the benefit to using a projector versus, say, a 4K TV?
Well, for me, I air before the beginning of everyone a welcome to the Gordon Family Cinema parody ad of Greg Marcus. that I really feel like I've nailed that impression down perfectly. And I use a song from the soundtrack to the movie Dave with Kevin Kline. I put a lot of effort into it. So there's that. I think that with the projection screen, because there's other elements that go into it, like the projection, you see more light being thrown, and the fact that you have to turn off all the lights to get like the full appreciation for it.
Right.
It feels more like a cinematic experience. We had to buy blackout curtains for my basement for it. So there's something about the lights being turned off.
That kind of artifacting where instead of it being lit from behind itself with little LEDs or whatever,
Yep.
it's being lit from an actual bulb and being sent through the room.
And even like if someone uses their phone during this, like the light pollution from the phone, is seen. So that person has to turn their phone off quick.
Right. Okay.
So it brings you into another space.
I guess too, you're never dealing with the kind of processing and like a frame rates or refresh rates that a lot of TVs have built in.
Yeah.
You don't have to compete with that kind of stuff.
And my television is much better than the screen is right now. Like I did not buy a $3,000 projector.
Right.
I bought a $400 projector.
Sure. Well,
So-
I've got a bunch of actual film projectors that I would love to just have set up. Because I would love to start building a collection of 8mm and 16mm films. I would love to have a space to set that up, but in a 1-bedroom apartment, I mean, you just don't. That's just not a thing, right? There's just no
Right.
space for that. Once I become a homeowner and can have a yard with a dog, projection room comes next. You have to see.
Or a houseboat owner.
What do
You could also own a houseboat.
I don't want to own a houseboat.
Why not?
Why would I ever want to live on water?
I think it'd be amazing.
No, that's silly.
You never have to worry about your house burning down.
Do you want to know what houseboat screams?
What?
I just got divorced. That's what houseboats are.
To me, it screams,
No.
Are you ready to be kidnapped? Climb aboard.
Where locally
Permission granted.
would you fucking tie yourself up on the Red River, JJ?
No, that's even better. Like you'd have to be on a lake. So it's like, what's the fucking point of having a houseboat if you're on a lake?
Otherwise, you're fighting the current constantly. You're having to deal with people camping along the bank.
You know who did live in a houseboat? In the movie Drop Dead Fred, starring Carrie Fisher. For more information, go back to, I think, episode 2 of JJ Meets World with Kevin Kennedy. He talks about how he worked on that movie, and Carrie Fisher's character lived on a houseboat that Phoebe Cates burns to the I guess water surface.
Doesn't Mel Gibson live on one at some point in Lethal Weapon, or am I misremembering that? Has he got a little trailer and it's not a houseboat?
Yeah,
I think it's got
a trailer on the beach.
gets next to the water.
Yeah.
He's a romantic batch. All he needs is that.
Keanu Reeves lives in a houseboat in the movie The Replacements. And I think so does Bruce Willis in that weird movie where he's a Hudson River cop in New York City.
Is the idea there supposed to be that these are characters who live on a shaky foundation? Is that the whole thing?
Oh,
Or just is that what's going on there?
Yeah, probably.
I am so judgmental of people who live on boats. I really am. I just am. Even if they're wealthy and do it, I'm still like, come on, get off the water.
You know what I think is a little much is someone who lives in a houseboat but also has a waterbed.
Yeah. One of the best Jim Gaffigan jokes I ever heard was when he came to the Civic Center years ago. He's been here a couple of times. And me and girl I was dating at the time went and watched him and laughed so hard I almost literally fell into the aisle out of my seat. And he's just got a joke. I'll repeat it. It's his joke, but it's that his wife had said to him recently that she wanted to get a waterbed. And he said, yeah, but honey, we're not pedophiles. I had a waterbed growing up. I wanted one.
So did I.
Requested one because I thought this has got to be awesome. It must be amazing. And I stuck to it for a couple of years, but no, it's not. It's a nightmare.
Oh, it's awful.
It's terrible.
It's always cold.
Yep.
Always so cold.
Or too hot.
Yep.
You can never find the right in between. laying on a bed of a bladder filled with water does not feel like laying on air, and you're constantly hearing the water bubbling and swishing around.
So here's the thing. I'm assuming you didn't have a waterbed. Well, no, because I've known you since you were old enough to smash.
Yeah, no.
You never,
I was younger.
like me too. I had it when I was like in 4th, 5th, 6th grade at the most.
Right.
And I could only imagine once I became, an active participant in the ways of love,
Right.
of having one of those. And I've been intimate on a hammock, but never on a waterbed. And I can tell you this much. The hammock was awful.
Yeah.
Because it's always moving around. You can never quite get your balance, and nobody looks good dismounting from a hammock.
Well,
nobody, no matter what. And a waterbed is that same thing. Like, if you're in the middle and you've got to like work yourself over, you kind of look like a seal trying to get off a hot rock in the ocean. And I just don't understand the appeal of it. And then did yours ever pop? Did yours ever get a leak?
No.
So
never
mine,
popped that I can recall.
Mine got a leak on a Lego, and it was just
On a Lego?
on a Lego that got underneath, and so it was just enough where like I stepped into my room and there's squishy carpet, and I remember my dad, it was like 10:30 at night, having to siphon, get a siphon started like in middle of the winter for like the bed to empty, and it was just miserable.
You want to know the answer to all those issues of where you supposed to do your business? You buy a giant 1975 Ford Econoline conversion van.
Oh, really?
That's what you do.
That smells like gasoline.
They won't care
inside?
about the gas smell because they're as horny as you are.
Oh, if I could go back and talk to a younger JJ, the things I would be like, hey, listen, man, you just gotta you gotta push movies out of your mind, because nothing is going to be like that at all.
No.
It's gonna be weird and it's gonna be gross, and you're never gonna know exactly how to like clean up the area before or after.
Yeah, I would go to me and I'd be like, you're on the right track with the larger vehicle. Just don't go with this particular one.
Don't paint it to look like the Mystery Machine.
Don't even you're not going to complete it, so don't even try. It's not the right vehicle anyways. And you're going to go through a lot of money buying metal acrylic paint. And yes, there's curtains on the inside and shag carpet, and boy, isn't that cool? There's a couch in the back. That is pretty cool, dude. But you are going to be spending upwards of $40 a week on gas.
When gas was cheap.
That, oh God, I'd never just figure something out right away. It takes so much failure for me to figure something out.
You are actually learning by doing. Yes. Learning by doing.
I wish I could have just been learning by listening.
You know, I got to tell you, Tucker, this is exactly the conversation I needed today.
Oh, that's good.
I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you being my friend and an amazing producer for JJ Meets World. And I'm going to go home with a smile on my face in remembering that van. And how almost, in honesty, there is enough of a gas smell that night that we camped out for Final Fantasy, we're lucky nobody died.
We got pretty fucked up.
I mean, we all could have been like just never woken up.
I should not have been driving that vehicle.
No,
it was not road safe.
No,
or road worthy.
But it was easy.
Oh,
to
and
spot.
It had a CB radio built into the dash too, which I thought was pretty cool. Although that almost caused a car accident on my first day of my license.
Really?
Yeah. So if you don't live around here, you probably don't know the area, but North Fargo, El Zagel, that dip on 3rd between the river.
Sure.
And
it's a river road, so it's a low-laying road.
Yeah.
But the dip, you go easily like 30 feet down and 30 feet back up in the span of a city block.
Right. So I'm, 16? I now have my driver's license, meaning I don't need an adult with me when I'm driving. I'm taking it out for my first spin as a fully licensed driver. And I'm going down that road. This is again, 1975 Ford Econoline conversion van. It is a tank. It is made of steel, right? Like it's not like how they make cars today. Not even close. And built into the dash was the ceiling dash, like above you, was a CB radio, almost like if you were in a trucker's thing. Excuse me. So it's raised above your head and forward. And the shocks in this vehicle were shit, right? It's not made for that. And so you're bouncing everywhere you're basically going in this tank. And I'm going down that road, and the handset of the CB radio like pops loose because of all the vibrating, and it swings around and it smacks me in the face. And I veer left into oncoming traffic, and there's a car coming right at me. So I overcorrect, veer right. Now I'm going towards the river, and I fully go off the road and into the little land area before the river, and then correct back onto the street again. I was 3 blocks from my house. I had barely started driving, and I almost took out like a family and submerged myself in the river because, there's a CB radio in this vehicle. Yeah, it was dumb. But I learned a lot. That I learned driving during the winter time in that vehicle.
You also learned driving a big enough vehicle too, where you got a real respect for spatial issues, I imagine.
That's true. I've had to drive a couple of large vehicles. I can't do manuals. Never learned on a manual ever. Everything I've always driven has been an automatic. But I'm a modern man. I'm not a Flintstone.
You're not using your feet to pedal.
No, I'm not.
Forward?
I'm not. Technology does that work for me. I don't need to be that in control of the vehicle's shift. But anyways, yeah, so that's prepared me.
Dude, this is great.
This is a good one.
This is great. Thank you so much, Tucker. I appreciate you. And listen, I appreciate the listeners of JJ Meets World as well. In fact, I want to give a shout out. I was doing a work event recently, and a gentleman walked up, and he had a donation for the group we were raising funds for, but he also had a donation for us here at JJ Meets World, and it was incredibly generous, and it'll pay for a whole month of our hosting.
Nice
here, and that is just amazing.
Thank you, sir.
And we will continue to give you free episodes of JJ Meets World. They will be available to you no matter what way you consume the podcast that you love. And thanks to his generosity, a whole month.
That's awesome.
A whole month for you guys. So thank you so much, and thank you to the people who give to our Patreon. Thank you to the people who leave us reviews. One of these days, I want to see a spike on iTunes, and so I don't know what that is going to take, but you guys are already doing the hard work behind the scenes, and so I appreciate that. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. You know that song Kokomo by the Beach Boys? I don't know why, but whenever I have a dream and I'm like in high school, that song is like playing. I hear my principal saying, "And now the Beach Boys Kokomo."